souhaite la bienvenue.
And I welcome you here to the Social Affairs, Science and Technology Committee.
Alan Ogilvie from Nova Scotia, Deputy Chair of the committee, and I will be chairing the meeting today. And while I realize that our distinguished witness recognizes all of the committee members, I would nevertheless, for the viewing audience, like to have my colleagues introduce themselves, and I will start on my right with Senator Damaris.
Introduce myself?
Yes.
Senator Jacques Damaris, happy to be here.
Thank you.
From Quebec.
Yana Martin, British Columbia.
André Champagne, Province de Québec.
André Champagne, Province of Quebec.
Catherine Colbeck, Prince Edward Island.
I'm Tony Banks from Alberta.
And I'm Hannah Marchant from Saskatchewan.
And I'm Jane Cordy from Nova Scotia.
Jude Seidman from Quebec. Welcome, Senator Munson.
Don Plett, Manitoba.
Thank you, colleagues. And today we will be considering two Senate introduced bills, and we will be starting with the first one, which will be Bill S-211, which is a bill that would designate every April 2nd as World Autism Awareness Day. And the way I would like to proceed with your agreement is to invite our distinguished witness to make a presentation. I will then determine whether we expect any amendments to the bill, and if so, have those passed out. And then we would proceed to considering reaching a conclusion with regard to the bill, if that is your wish. Thank you. And so with that, Senator Munson, we would be very pleased to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Chair, and it's wonderful to be amongst colleagues on both sides of the Senate today. I know that I've had a great deal of support from all of you in this particular endeavor of mine. I've been in this position before, about a year or so ago, and I'd reached a point where I was really hoping that it would become law, because the bill had moved from committee to the House of Commons and had gotten almost to committee on the other side with support of my Conservative friends. And then Parliament was suspended. That's the way things happen in politics, and I accept those things that do happen, and I am not necessarily a patient man, but I am here representing the autistic community and my own personal voyage, I would say, in delivering this, and I hope that one day that we will have a World Autism Awareness Day. Je suis très heureux d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui.
I'm very pleased to appear before you today. My impression is that I've traveled for a long time. This voyage has been a long one, and today is an important step in this voyage.
An act respecting World Autism Awareness Day is the culmination of work that I started shortly after being appointed to this place, and I was very moved by some of the witnesses who've appeared before you, but I was moved first of all by an Andrew Kabchak on Parliament Hill, who was wearing a sort of a billboard in front of him saying, "Please help my son now." And he said, "Senator, I knew you when you worked at CTV, and you're not going to walk by me, you're going to hear my story." And he told me his story about his son, and it was a very tearful moment. Andrew, along with many other people in the autistic community, have been in my corner, and I've been in their corner, trying to help out in any way I can in moving towards a national autism spectrum disorder strategy. Now, for the last 6 years of working on behalf of people with autism or ASD and their families, it has given me a sense of focus that has enriched my experience as a senator with meaning and purpose. As you know, a few years ago, in all-party support, we issued a report called Pay Now or Pay Later in Autism Families in Crisis. And the words pay now, pay later came from an autistic man from New Brunswick who said, "Folks, we're going to have to do something more because," in other words, he said, "pay now, because it's going to cost us as a society a lot more later." The last thing you want to see again are putting people back into institutions because for some reason we don't feel they should be included. And we worked hard and learned a lot during that inquiry. And there are still many recommendations in that report that need to be put into place. I'd like to say as well that as we move towards and hopefully to making this a law, that our former colleague, Senator Keon, has been in my corner from the very beginning. The good doctor has supported me in all of my endeavors in dealing with autism, and I miss him. And I'm sure we all do, but I will always seek his counsel. On World Autism Awareness Day, we simply need this day because we need to provide awareness. We need to provide opportunities for Canadians to come together around a common cause. Autism is a condition that affects families from coast to coast. I've said before that there's no border when it comes to autism. To have a national day, we recognize that ASD is a national problem, and we validate the people who have autism, who love people with autism, who care for people with autism, and who work on behalf of people with autism. One thing we heard during that inquiry, for background purposes, was the sense of isolation that people and families with ASD feel. Social isolation is, of course, one of the principal characteristics of autism. But this condition also isolates the families and friends around the person with ASD. The constant care ASD requires is a 24/7 job. This often means that in two-parent families, one person stays at home full-time and looks after the child with autism. And this parent has a heavy burden, and given the nature of the condition, lives also in isolation. Simple things, birthday parties, play groups, play dates, trips to the library or the mall. For example, sometimes you might see in a mall a mother with a child and struggling. And sometimes our instincts are saying, boy, that's what's wrong over there. But we don't take the time to say, what's right over there? What can we do to participate in this and be part of that child's life? And even afternoon playing at the park. The cost of care, much of which is not covered by provincial programs, may require that the family earner take on a second job. Guess again, this means more isolation, more family stress. And as many of you know, families are breaking apart. The load at ASD is too much to bear alone. Now, declaring April 2nd World Autism Awareness Day won't change that day-to-day reality, but I feel strongly that it sends out a message. It says to these children and their families, you are not alone. We may never fully understand the isolation a person with ASD feels, but we can imagine a little of what it might be like. The frustration, the fear, anxiety. And we can also imagine the isolation of the people who care and love people with ASD. While we still have much more to do to help them in a substantive way, as Pay Now or Pay Later recommends, in the meantime, we can say through World Autism Awareness Day, we care, we are here, we want to help, we want to understand. This legislative journey for this bill has been enlightening for me as a senator. I've learned that autism affects people all over the world. It's estimated that tens of millions have autism worldwide. It's a staggering figure, but it's a fact. Countries have taken action everywhere. The Centers for Disease Control in the United States has declared autism a serious public issue. And President Obama promised to appoint what he refers to as an autism czar to oversee and coordinate a nationwide response. He has promised to build, as you may note, on the Combating Autism Act, which provides $108 million for research, and promised as well to fully fund the Individuals with Disabilities education. I want to say here for a moment, I do applaud the government for some of the work that has been done in terms of tax breaks for grandparents and others who have grandchildren with autism, and it's very, very helpful. But the day that we can say the government of Canada is devoting even more funding to ASD will indeed be a happy day, especially the day when we have a national autism strategy to pull together the disparate efforts that exist across the country, helping us to be more effective and coordinated in our support for families with ASD. I can't tell you going across this country, and I've been to dozens and dozens of places. I talked about the isolation. Sometimes in our city here, we're working on a program called First Start with a woman by the name of Suzanne Jacobson, and she has 2 grandchildren, and each one of us are doing a little something to raise funds and money, but they are operating in isolation, and there are people where I come from originally in Atlantic Canada who are not going to Alberta for oil. They're going because there's a program there and other programs out west where there's a fund set up for autistic children from 0 or 2 to 18. We have lineups on Ontario. Ontario is doing a pretty good job, but there's still lineups. And families are breaking up and people are mortgaging their homes. In the meantime, on this World Autism Awareness Day, I think we can, like other countries, Bahrain, Australia, Spain, Panama, and the hundreds of others,